3, 2. All right, here we are. We're live again. What episode number is this? Have we started counting, Chad?
Two.
2. This is the magic.
Well, people will
2.
see this at various times. We are recording the week of Thanksgiving, and yeah,
Wow.
a lot to be thankful for.
What do you got to be thankful for?
Tons of what have I got to be thankful for?
I don't know. Tell me. What do you got to be thankful for?
I mean, I get to work with you, right? Like, what else is there?
I have a feeling that you get the same response when people hear about you working with me than my wife gets when she's walking around with me, which is that poor woman.
Yeah. I'm just pandering as hard as you are by wearing that shirt right now that you are.
Yeah. So actually, I think this is a pretty good segue to today's guests. And so we're going to be joined. Who's coming on to this? It's Alonzo and Cijoy from GM Pilot.
And we're going to be talking about in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
And AI agents in sales and marketing realm, and that seems to be getting the lion's share of the attention. But
yeah,
in parallel, there's amazing things happening in automation to make restaurants run more efficiently, and helping the teams on that side. And so we've got the perfect guests today to discuss that with Zoe and Cijoy.
Okay. Well, why don't we invite them on stage? But beforehand, maybe I'll give a little intro to the audience, let them know what these guys do. I'm not sure if I've ever heard of them. Personally, when we met up with them in Vegas, what a shot in the arm. I mean, we're talking two genuine guys that are really approachable, that can break this down in a way that even I can understand, which I like. And the fact that they're leading in a place that's going to save money is something that you and I both vibe on, because it's not always the money, it's the time, right? And where do you find that? And what is it? The juncture that they operate in is at the junction of time and money.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. So, all right. Well, so today we're thrilled to welcome Alonzo and Cijoy, the dynamic co-founders of GM Pilot. Alonzo brings over 30 years of expertise in restaurant operations, marketing, and growth, including 14 years shaping the Chipotle brand as national marketing director. His focus has been built on building systems that help restaurants boost sales, cut costs, and outpace the competition. Cijoy, GM Pilot's COO, leverages extensive experience as a former chief information officer for industry giants like Red Lobster and Fogo de Chao. Together, they're rethinking labor management for restaurants, blending their unique backgrounds to create a solution that drives efficiency and profitability across the industry. That sounds pretty good.
It's a mouthful, but it's awesome.
Yeah, I think I got it. Hey, why don't we welcome to the stage Alonzo and Cijoy? Come on to the show. Welcome,
guys.
Round of applause. Look at my applause around. Perfect. Thank you. Hey guys, good afternoon. Happy pre-Turkey Day. Welcome to the Chat GTM show. I think we actually did our first warm-up round with you before the RFDC show. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's right. Getting the muscles worked out.
Cool. So Chad, where are we going today? What's going on?
Well, so we've known you guys a little bit now, but not everybody watching and listening will. So for this question, I think is going to get us started on the right track. It's what inspired you to create GM Pilot, and how did you identify labor management as a critical issue to be solved?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wonder if it's exactly the same for Cijoy and I. I do think where we came together was wanting to really disrupt how the industry was leveraging technology. I think we saw a lot of the same use cases out there, and we wanted to go after what we felt like are the really tough problems, and we wanted to solve for the person that we felt like was kind of the linchpin in a lot of technology out there for restaurants to work, and that was the general manager.
Makes sense.
And so was this like a flux capacitor moment? Was Cijoy hanging a clock above a toilet, fell, slipped, hit his head, and invented the time traveling schedule optimizer? Like, how did this happen though? Like, what was the moment of inspiration? You found this, like, what brought you guys together? Like, let's do this.
Mm-hmm. I think the flux. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's like
I think I threw him up with a flux capacitor.
Yeah. I have to watch that movie tonight now.
I think for us, for Zoe and I, in both our respective domains, we see lots of opportunity to do things better and differently, but then the challenge is always adoption, and the products are getting more capable and more sophisticated. The customers are getting more demanding. The aspects of the business are getting more complicated, especially now that third-party delivery and everything else, and the amount of workload that a GM has to process in order to figure out what to buy, who to schedule. All that is just far more cumbersome and complex than it was before. And then on top of that, the GMs are no longer people with 20 years of experience before they become a GM. They may have just a few, and they turn over in 18 months. So we looked at this and like the world is upside down. And so more flux capacitors, it just wasn't going to do it. Right. It's
I
like,
love
so,
the terminology. I mean, so I come from a background of labor scheduling, from two different large back office providers. So I have a sense of that, and I've seen enough Gantt charts in my time, and I've seen enough, different kinds of labor forecasts. But we've all looked at those and we've all seen the same things. What was it that you saw, right, that made this special? Because you shared with me that it's not what they're seeing here. It's all in the rounding issues that come about, right? They're rounding things. Like what is that special part about this that makes this different?
I think in general, I think what you're talking about is how we think about averages, right? It's like there's so much information that can flow into somebody's face, and then how much of it they can actually do something with. So in the end, it's like all we've done is just think about averages, whether that's labor percentage averages, or the average of what your customer satisfaction score looks like, what have you. But the devil, as we know, is always in the details, and there's all of these little tiny indicators of opportunity that are just elusive because the time it takes to go chase them down is just beyond anyone's time capability, right? And in labor, if you really wanted to dig in and start looking at every single detail, you probably start that at 2 in the morning when your end of day runs,
Yeah.
and you got to turn that out before the general manager, gets going at 7 a.m. Not too many people are going to be up from 2 to 7 doing it across hundreds of locations and consistently with the level of detail that's necessary to kind of really extract it and then do it consistently. 'Cause you got to do that every single day of the year in order for some type of change effect to come around. And that's where Zoe and I are like, hey, this is what needs to happen. I was like, can we do it? And then we finally got put bought the right flux capacitors and start assembling the time machine. And then
Got
Yeah.
Mr. Fusion
yeah,
in there.
we actually can do this. Mhm,
Yeah.
So
One of the things I remember, Cijoy, was,
mhm.
Cijoy kind of sent me this, well, he sent me this manifesto. And what resonated with me was he zeroed in on the GM and what we saw that maybe others didn't see, or they saw it, but we're kind of like, well, we don't really have a solution for this, is as powerful as the software is, and there's a lot of really great software solutions there. They all have the biggest variable is when you put that user in place. You got a good user, you get the results you want. But consistently, when you're looking at a company that has over 1,000 locations or even over 20, getting everyone to be a super user to the level they need to be to use that software to get the results that
yep,
software promises, it's impossible until GM
yep,
Pilot came along. Because we create that user, what it means for the GM is I don't have to be, super deeply involved in how this software works, which is impossible because I've got other things I have to do. And what it means for the
yep,
software companies is they can be as complex as they want and serve their client in a way that isn't so dependent on the user, or they don't have to worry about, well, gosh, can these folks really do this day in and day out with the complexity that we put in? Now they go, yeah, we can be as complex as we want. And in fact, Cijoy and I love when the word complexity comes up because that's where GM Pilot just eats that stuff up.
Yeah, it is. The information is displayed in a simplified view that you go do these following bits of tuning, right? And it's really what it is. It sounds like it's tuning, like tuning this and that you wouldn't be able to catch normally.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
That's
Right?
right.
if you guys, I don't want everyone to miss high level what GM Pilot does. Could you just talk about the whole solution and how scheduling automation works? Because I wanted people to know like how you're different than other tools, but how you work with other tools too. I think that's an
Yeah.
important point of clarity.
The grand vision is that if you have an incredibly capable, let's say, operator in the building that could do things at the level of a financial planning analyst would do,
Yep.
along with um, the ability to churn through all that data, analyze everything, make great decisions, and then apply it, then that would be materially different than any other approach ever. Now, the focus areas for us have been, let's focus on core costs because that's universal, and then that's labor and inventory. Let's begin with inventory because that is something that's low to the ground. There's very quick opportunity for value creation for the brands immediately, and that cash that flows out of that can then be applied, and that time, like
Hmm.
we all worry about, can then be applied to go do other things like improve inventory, cycle counts, whatever it may be. And then once you've steered the GM away from having to sit down and spend hours at a time building a weekly schedule or trying to figure out what's really going on, now you free them to go focus on inventory, and then we can support there. And then from there, we can free from inventory over back into the revenue generation side of the business of which is kind of our phase three, is what can we do to tune the online ordering capabilities, the marketing capabilities, and the order management capabilities. So, what does that? I mean, that's the most esoteric one. So let me give you an example. If you want to do a new product introduction, usually at an enterprise level, that's a lot of pre-planning because a lot of data entry and pricing updates, et cetera, that have to happen. Usually that has to be scheduled out with GM Pilot. It's like, you can give that to us, we'll deploy it. If you want to start tweaking continuously based on pricing signals, et cetera, we can do that all day
Hmm.
long because we have our capability, doesn't stop when the clock ends for the shift. So when you start doing that, then the entire what you can do in terms of optimizing your four walls to drive traffic in, to schedule the right people, to make sure all the right inventory is in play, and then to balance all that with customer feedback. That becomes the overall grand vision of what we're going for. But what we're focusing on at this stage is purely on labor because that's problematic for everybody, and
Yep.
there's significant dollars to be saved immediately just by focusing there.
And those costs are not going down, right? This is something that's kind of here to stay.
Yeah.
It's funny. Years ago when I was selling labor the first time around, we kept talking about how, you might have a rock star at one location and you have a system because that'll at least make everybody almost as good as the rock star by automation. And now 15 years later, we're talking about this on top of the system to make everybody the rock star amplified out of something they've already squeezed here, but you can always squeeze a little bit more. And I
Mhm.
love that they were able to do that, right? Where they
Mhm.
thought, yep, we got it. No, you don't. There's still more to go. Hey, you have a specialized term that you use when we're looking at this stuff, and you called it unscheduled labor, or what was it? What's your term?
Zoe, you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
we've created a few terms. One
Yeah,
is
what are they?
you're
Like I,
talking
I was like looking
about
at these are great.
so Joy really mapped out, the phases that we use, and we stay within this theme of, GM Pilot, and we talk about our ground control, which is our first phase, and that's really the analytics side of what GM Pilot
Mhm.
does, and that's an important piece, is really looking at where is the opportunity in terms of labor, and we coined a phrase called unplanned paid time, or UPT, as that opportunity. So ground control goes in and finds all your unplanned paid time, and that's exactly what it sounds like. Hey, your team was scheduled this way, but they actually punched in this way. And we show you the opportunity, and we categorize it so that a GM and above can all understand, okay, we have people that are milking the clock. We have people that are buddy punching, which is a fairly common term in the industry, which is, hey, me and Cijoy are boys. I'm going to give Cijoy an extra shift this week because he's got to buy new rims for his car.
Always.
Your
Yeah.
rims are weak, I have to tell you.
Always.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, he's always trying to do something. And then we have this other piece, which is just, I look. There's another term that's used in the industry, which is orchestrated chaos. But even that can get out of control. You don't want to see a schedule that's got 60 moving parts, because it's an indicator that a manager's trying to manage things on the fly, and they're not using that forethought. It comes up, the business is sometimes unpredictable, and so you have to make quick changes. But if you're seeing through ground control that there's just a lot of movement on the schedule, this guy, I pulled him over here, and this person I pulled over here, it's ripe for a lot of unplanned paid time that you don't need to give up. And then we go, that next phase that Cijoy talked about is flight school, which is performance based. What's the ideal number of people to have each hour? What is the performance of this team versus maybe another team that's experiencing a similar type of business? And so it gives the manager an understanding, it gives the entire company an understanding of who are the best people to be working and how many of those people do you need to have on. And what is the experience like for the guests that are coming in and getting served by these folks? And then, ironically, the last piece was the first piece that we kind of started on, which is flight planner, which was, let's just write the schedule for these managers. It takes out all the bias. It takes out all the the brain space that a manager has to kind of keep on hold for understanding what they need to do for the schedule. We'll just write it for them. We know we'll be consistent. We know we'll be perfectly trained. We know we'll be unbiased. So team members will get the fair schedule, and it will always come out exactly when it's supposed to, as far in advance as required. And in some states, like the state I live in, it will
Like 6
always be
weeks or
compliant.
something?
Yeah.
So Cijoy, you guys are hitting on some of the things that you're finding that have an impact, but if you could quantify this, like, what are some of the most common bottlenecks or inefficiencies you're seeing in labor in restaurants? And I'd be very curious too, if you could hit on, I'm sure people are wondering, okay, so is this, where do you get more bang for your buck in terms of how your system works, in terms of identifying bad actors and weeding out that behavior, or just optimizing based on the data, where it's not really like somebody's doing something wrong, it's just you're using the data to great effect?
In the analysis we've done with some of our CFO partners, it's pretty equally balanced. And so, like Zoe said, we've got 3 phases we go through. Each phase really hits somewhere between 2 to 3% in profitability improvement overall. And we've intentionally kind of sequenced it out from ground control first. That's your, let's say, bad actors, bad behavior, just letting people know that you are supposed to follow your schedule, not just do what you feel like doing. And that's a quick one. And that's, once everyone understands that, then the culture lifts. And then once a culture is lifted within that one building, then you can start looking at peers of buildings. And then it's a belief system of, I know I'm always slammed. I always need to have this many people around me to feel comfortable. Someone else is, we're slammed too, but I run it with less people. And then that starts very quick conversations about what are you doing differently, and always the nuances of the PMix, et cetera, floor plans, layouts, split between on-premise, off-premise. All those things can then be a very constructive conversation to figure out, do you really need to have this many people, and your customer service scores are still about the same. But again, it's enlightening for the GMs to identify which peers they should be collaborating with. And then after that, it's our capabilities around living with and superpowering existing scheduling systems allows us to do levels of detail that are very elusive for a GM to sit down and, we clocked it once. It would take someone about 4 to 6 hours to sit
Wow.
down and build a schedule to detail, but they also have to be purely uninterrupted, have an FP&A background. I will give a shout out to Brian Roberts. He was a FP&A person I worked with in the past, and the idea was, if Brian was sitting here doing this, what would Brian do? So I think we jokingly called. I told him, "Hey, I'm going to make Brian GPT and and stick you in every building, because if someone of that capability is sitting there and doing the planning to that level of precision,
Yeah,
then we're doing things that we've never been able to physically do before."
that's awesome. Um, I have a two-part question. So when you have a GM or you have a group of GMs that are out there using this tool, do you report back on who's actually using it the most successfully? Actually, adoption, like it was given a recommendation, but did we take that recommendation and are you utilizing that?
So I'll jump in, but I do want Zoe to narrate this one too. Uh, for us, adoption's a really great word because there is no adoption curve with what we're doing. It's because there's no software. It's like,
Yeah,
this is as if you hired an assistant general manager to
but do
sit
they
there.
listen to them? Right?
That part,
Mhm.
yeah, that part we do see. We do see the adoption because it's something we're telling them every single day repeatedly. And we've seen organizations bring this into the weeklies. So now the weekly reviews of how you're performing, there is a ground control report that's being reviewed and understood by everybody and being applied. And for us,
Got
it's a matter of, we intentionally made everything just very directive about, this is the most simple thing you need to see. You can read the subject, when the email hits your box, you can read the subject line and if this is a message that you need to dig deeper into or not. So within a few seconds, should I follow up or not? So we save all that energy from, you don't need to read every single message you get. You just need to read the ones where that threshold is above where it needs to be. And then you've got very line of sight about what happened. And
Nice.
so,
And
Mhm.
so with that in mind, then what are so can you give an example of like some of the results you've seen come out of the folks that are using this?
Yeah. So do you want to pick up on this?
Yeah. Well, so Joy spoke to percentages in terms of labor, the lower labor percentages, and you
Yeah.
know, from the very beginning, we can start at 1 to 2%, and now we have clients that are projecting upwards of 5 to 6% in total labor savings. But something that we're touching on that is really important is, one, from the bottleneck standpoint, we're we're removing this big bottleneck, which is time. The time a manager not just is the actual writing of the schedule, but getting really good at understanding their team's behavior so that they can optimize that schedule over time and understand, okay, here's me writing the forecast, and now here's what I need to do in terms of scheduling labor. The gap is, if you don't understand the behavior on the labor side, you're probably overcompensating for sales. I'll just throw labor at my problems is a very common
Right.
labor bottleneck. We take that away. The other bottleneck is team behavior itself. A lot of times, and I'm glad Chad mentioned this, we're not saying what people are doing is wrong. What we're showing them is things that they didn't even know they were doing. So Chad may not know in his world, he's not thinking about how everybody else is clocking in and out. He doesn't understand the impact if he's clocking out 15, 20 minutes late each shift.
Mm.
But when you extrapolate that over multiple people, over multiple days, that's what GM Pilot's showing folks. And so when we talk about the results, that percentages comes in place in turn, and adoption comes in place where we're removing excuses for the GM, where it's like, well, I can't do it because I've got it takes hours to do the data crunching, and I have to pull it from multiple places to even make sense, and that's not a skill set that I have, and I can't do it consistently even if I did. And if I was doing it consistently, I'm probably not doing a whole slew of other things that are required for running the restaurant. Well,
Hmm.
now GM Pilot removes that, so we serve it up on a platter for the GM to very easily take the information they need to understand where they need to spend their time or who they need to spend their time with. As an additional result, if they're communicating this with the team starts to understand their behavior. So the adoption happens just organically. And then we have these people that we call habitual line steppers. So we just make it really uncomfortable not to address it. So if we have people that are consistently not behaving in terms of how they're scheduled properly, they're on a list. And you can't hide because it's being shown at a regional level and a home office level. So, we think most people want to do the right thing. And so just by communicating, the behavior is going to change. But we also understand that there may be some habitual line steppers that need a little extra pressure. And as a GM, hey, my area director or regional director is seeing this information as well. And as a regional director, you go, I know the home office is getting this. I don't want to be the one that's, pulling, dragging their feet, especially when this is all laid up. I know exactly who I need to be talking to, what restaurants, what GMs, what team members. So the adoption kind of comes pretty quickly because it's about transparency. And with transparency, you get the accountability. And with accountability, you get adoption.
Boom.
There you go.
Boom.
So guys, I'm already hearing that GM Pilot is impacting quality of life for the GM and the team. And it's interesting to note that this is a recurring theme now. The last gentleman we talked to on the pod was Roy Braub of High Auto, and he was calling that out too. Like, whereas people would expect, just more of an impact on efficiency, there's that human element, that cultural impact as well. Could you talk about that very pointedly with GM Pilot? What is the human impact of the solution you're saying?
Yeah, so there's a lot. We're looking at three things. One, the impact GM Pilot has on the guest experience. And so what you'll see when it comes to the schedule and managing labor is it can be sort of a vacuum. And done well, all of a sudden you have what, when I was at Chipotle, we called aces in their places. We may have stolen that from McDonald's. So I heard the other day that was one of their terms too. But the idea is
but weren't they a business subsidiary? They were connected at one point closely. So it's okay that they had that.
Yeah. It was totally fine. Yeah. So, but the idea is you want to have your best people in working, the shift, because that makes for a better experience. And GM Pilot provides the information specifically through flight school to make that happen. The other idea is that we want the manager doing the things that they're best at, which is interacting with the guests. GM Pilot frees the manager up, that truly frees them up. We're literally taking a task. I know a lot of people talk about, hey, we're going to get you out of the back of the house. We're going to get you back doing what you're supposed to be doing. But we really do it because we're removing a very, very big task from the GM's plate. And what it also means for the team is your team members get this very consistent, never having to worry about, is the schedule going to come out on time? And is the manager going to get my availability right? All of these kind of moving parts, they, as a team member, all you care about is your own schedule. And because GM Pilot can be consistent across 70 plus employees at one location, which is really hard for one person to do, all of a sudden you have team members that are getting the consistent schedule, and they're also noticing that the best performers are getting the shifts, which is good. We want to encourage people to do great work. And so, top performers like to work with top performers. And that's what GM Pilot does, is it makes sure we got the best of the best working. And of course, the quality of life and the things that GM Pilot does on a human level for our operators is they want to do a good job with labor. They want, I believe, that many people are the kind of manager I was like. I felt really good when I got things right. And I felt really frustrated when I didn't have the tools or the data, the information to do my job. And GM Pilot is really laying that up for the GMs of the restaurants. And then, of course, all the way up, everyone can set these expectations around labor without this kind of amorphous kind of enigma of, well, where do we go to fix it? Which was kind of always been the status quo.
Where am I missing?
We know exactly where to
I've asked myself that so many times. Where the hell am I missing?
Where am I missing? Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. I have so many things that I want to say about that, but I'm going to say that for my takeaways because I think there's some other pieces there that might be interesting too. You guys have said that this doesn't replace scheduling software. And when if I'm a back office and I hear that there's another tool in the market, I go, oh God, it just got more crowded, right? This should be exciting for anybody that has scheduling software or a back office system. This isn't a replacement. Let's talk about that interplay and how you actually make their current solutions more valuable and why, well, also not just for the end user, but why other ISVs will be interested in talking to you because of what you could potentially do for their solution.
Yeah, so I'll take a cut at this one. So it's best for everyone to not think of GM Pilot as software, but as another team member.
Mm,
This is a tireless team
paradigm
member.
shift. I like it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because what GM Pilot is doing is being that best team member that happens to somehow have an MBA in finance and doesn't have to sleep, and will constantly look at every single detail and take into everything in balance according to the rules, and then use the forecast the way they're supposed to be used, build up the optimal schedule, publish it, make sure that it's being followed, and then rewarding high performers with better shifts. There's all kinds of flexibility that you can ask your new teammate to go do, and they'll do it tirelessly and very gratefully do so as well. So that's a very, very big difference between the paradigm of another tool versus having an incredibly good teammate on board.
Got it.
Now we're obviously talking about labor a lot on this conversation. We're talking about labor savings, but let's talk about labor in the form of like the job market and labor market, right? And a brand's going to use GM Pilot. How does this help build them some sort of resiliency through the ups and downs of the labor market?
One of the things that's interesting is that everyone's fighting very hard to get the best talent in the door. And if you're fortunate enough to get them, then you want to reward them and give them the opportunities to show where they can really perform. But a lot of times our culture has always been, you don't get the best shifts until you've been around a while. And the people that are coming in the door may not have that kind of patience that used to exist, I would say, back when we were at that age or that level. So if they're coming in the door and now you've got a system, your GM pilot or your teammate is the one that's writing the schedule, seeing people that are performing really well, teams that are performing well, and then moving them to the opportune places, like Zoe said, put aces in places. If those aces are getting a shot, then they're going to stay around. They're going to continue to grow, continue to help the organization, and they'll lift the morale and the reputation about not just that brand, but that location and the GM and the overall management team. And you can see it. I mean, if you sit and watch Reddit and how server life and you watch that subreddit or what people talk about, you'll see that people will quit if things are too hard. They're just not going to bother trying to stick through it. They're just going to go somewhere else. So we're putting a ton of effort to bring people in, but then if you don't schedule them well, then that's a really easy opportunity to avoid losing out on people walking away because they're not getting the shifts they need.
That's awesome. Anything you'd add, Zoe?
Yeah, we've mentioned this before, but when a team member joins a restaurant, if that restaurant's using GM Pilot, we've changed the criteria that you would maybe promote one of those people to manager. So in other words, GM Pilot can actually make it easier for a team member to go from team member to manager. And so the reality for some of these people that are coming in is opportunity is real. I don't have to learn, or I don't have to spend months to learn complex software. I can take my skills that I was probably hired for in the first place, my interpersonal skills, and I've already learned the food. So the jump from team member to manager can actually be a little swifter, a little easier, a little simpler. And so that builds resiliency within the restaurant in terms of the labor market as well. And so I think that piece, and Cijoy, and I keep beating this drum, but one of the things that I remember when we were looking through surveys of the feedback from our team members, one of the things that really matters to them is getting the schedule right. And think about it. If you get a consistent schedule, one, you can schedule your life, right? And if it's done right, it means you don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, I'm going to get cut last minute because the manager is just throwing labor or cutting and pasting the schedule and not really thinking about the sales, and the sales aren't there and I get cut last minute. So I get more consistent income. I understand and I can bet on my schedule week in and week out, because the chances of it being drastically different because the manager's not staying on top of it is really, really slim, because GM Pilot's doing it. That kind of consistency really matters. And those are the people that are going to stick around versus going someplace else, any place else that doesn't have GM Pilot, because they're going to go into a more chaotic scheduling atmosphere.
Makes sense. We have one more question, and then we're going to get into some takeaways that I know Michael's been making note of. And that's
So many.
which is what's next? You guys are already doing so many things already, but what's next for GM Pilot?
So when Zoe and I started talking about this, we said, if we could go in and help the GM on the ground, what would we do? And there's what we call I think we all call it prime cost, right? It's the two controllables, the labor and inventory. And labor was the most opportune place to start, because everyone's got the problem, the cost of labor, the challenge of getting labor. It's always a force external to us that we have to try to get around. But what we're finding is that now that we're kind of unlocking so much profitability just by managing labor better than we did yesterday, that gives us time back to, let's say, go do some midweek inventories or some spot check inventories on critical items. Now, when we start doing that, especially with folks like Nomad Go that are out there using computer vision to help accelerate that, now you've got time back, you've got an accelerator tool that's going to get you inventory done at a more frequent basis. Now you have something that GM Pilot can rely on to say, yeah, we're running low on this, and there's a forecast coming up. Again, using the existing inventory management systems, and we can just follow through on those aspects. And now inventory starts getting better, and we don't have to worry about stock outs or hoarding or anything else. Again, these are all not because the tools don't exist or the processes don't exist. It's just a lack of time. And then when you run out of time, you just overbuy out of precaution, right? So obviously, like, the next thing is very much likely going to be inventory. But then Zoe always brought up this really good thing about, what about marketing? What about the demand side of managing how much demand is coming in the door for, let's say, an LTO offers being really well picked up? If we know that's coming in, or people are coming in on this weekend for a promo, then do we need to tune scheduling accordingly? Do we need to maybe throttle online ordering capability because we plan on a big indoor rush? All the things that are supply demand matching that, again, a really smart mathematician type economist sitting in the room, like if you had your FP&A person in every building, they'd be on top of this all day long. But those people have to eat sometimes, so they can't do it 24/7. But that's where GM Pilot can continuously do that. So our future vision is that we continue to help work the back office side of things so that the GMs can be on the floor, touch tables, talk to their teams, continue to do the things that it takes to really create that atmosphere that people want to come back to.
I almost think about this. I love the Three Amigos. I don't know. I'm assuming most of the
Are
planet
we going to
has
do the
seen
whole
it.
dance here?
Well, we could, but there's their saying where they're like, wherever there's injustice, we'll be there. For us, it's like wherever there's a need for a super user and software, we'll be there.
I see a
GM
meme
Pilot
coming.
will be there. Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
That's
And
our
speaking
deal.
of, we'll be there. Where are you going to be next year? Like, do you in Q1, or do you guys have any stops planned? Any shows? I mean, it's real light for our industry in Q1, but are you doing any events that are happening where people can find you?
Well, I know we've already pinpointed RLC and Murtech. We typically go to FS Tech as well, RFDC again next year. So I don't know about specifically first quarter, but those are the 4 conferences that we've already got on our radar. And I think we'll probably be able to hit a few more in there somewhere. Maybe even try and create a few of our own roundtable forums and bring some people together on the labor side and get some smart people together to come up with some really good solutions.
Rising tides right there, right? Bringing other
Rising
people on so that you
tides.
teach them.
Yeah.
We pepper that everywhere. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, it feels like a transition and kind of key takeaways at this point. It's funny. We've had people on the show or other providers on the show, and I've had like 1 or 2 takeaways. I've got a lot of takeaways. And so I'm going to TikTok through some of these, and we can riff on them if you like, but you can tell me if I'm wrong on some of them too. But just the overarching takeaway here is that AI agents continue to impress, right? This is the world we're entering. You guys are pioneering in a place where We've seen the tip of the iceberg coming for the last year, and now we're starting to see agents, to your point, not a piece of software or solution we're selling. We have
Super
a
user.
digital persona that's managing the business with the entire codis of the general manager's entire knowledge bases as its powering model. Like there's just so much to take in on that, right? And so we're going to keep hearing more of that. You think, Chad? I mean, the agents are here,
Yes,
right?
it's here.
I also think it's funny they're called agents in the Matrix, but we can come back to it later.
Mhm.
I think that, I love the fact that as we're talking about scheduling, the idea of bias removal,
Mhm.
big deal, right? You gave that person that schedule because you liked them better, or maybe influence, or whatever the case may be. So I think that is also another safety barrier for the business as well. You can't claim that bias is in place if it's there. I love the fact that it makes good managers great, and lets great managers do anything else with that other greatness, then write schedules or focus on that. I can do more guest experience. I can do more training. I can do more love to the business, and make that the thing that I really want to spend my time on, because that's why I love doing this. I guarantee they didn't sign up there to go, I want to write labor schedules every day.
Mhm. You're
So
right.
I think managers are really smart about firing themselves from work they no longer need. And I think the agents, like we said, are the ones that are going to help them do that and let them do the other things. So Chat and I talk often about, is AI our friend, right? Is something we should fear or should we embrace? And I think this is another case where you go, yeah, people are going to get fired from jobs they don't want to do. And it
Mhm.
can be done better with something digging into all these just mind-numbing minutia that if we could spend time there, we could get it out. But we don't have the time, and this thing moves at literally the speed of light and answers these questions that would take us a long time to do it. So I think that's absolutely massive. And then I got this whole list of benefits. And so I think you mentioned, Zoe, about where the people taking that unscheduled time and making it their own. Well, we could have invested that in other people on the schedule had we had control of our spend, right? And so that, I think that goes to quality of life and the consistency that you mentioned. And then there's a quality of life also that a lot of operations give out bonuses if you hit your labor number. What about that big fat check the manager's going to get because he did a good job, right? Not only is he hitting his labor targets, he just he got to buy a nice 100-inch TV for his family for Christmas.
Yep.
That's a quality of life. Then also you said the idea of shortening the path to promotion. I think that's fantastic because it makes people look good and the optics behind it are well. And if they manage their business and listen to what the tool's suggesting, will get them there too. I love the fact that you shared that, consistable, dependable scheduling equals less stress. I know I'm going to be able to work. I know I'm not going to have to find another second job, because a lot of these folks do have second jobs because they do have some food insecurity, I guess what they call it, right? And or just looking at their income. That is the single most important reason why they do this, is to feed their families. And so if we can remove that stress, I think that is massive. And that also goes to employer choice. And that also goes to the whole terroir of the business, or how everybody feels in the vibe, And the idea for years has been, let's get the GM out of the back office. Let's get them from being heads down to a heads up manager, where I'm looking at this and I'm not looking at paperwork and screens. And the moment I do this, my business benefits. I think that's pretty badass. Did I
Yeah.
miss anything on those takeaways? I think those are pretty spot on. And the one that you're not going to mention, or you didn't mention, was to the audience. I think one of the best takeaways here is their confidence level that this is going to do the job, because it's the revenue model that says that the loudest. If you want to work with GM Pilot, you don't have to cut them a big check to do it. You have to give them some data. You have to let them look at that, and they're going to show you how they're going to save you money. And what they charge is some of the money that you just didn't have in the first place, that you'd already written off. And so that savings they give you, that's where they're going to bill you from.
Mhm.
That's awesome. They're tying themselves to your success 100%. I can't help but plug, talk to
Yeah.
these guys, because I've never heard anybody saying, listen, I didn't want money that you have in the bank. I want money that I'm going to find for you. I think it's great. Guys, thank you so much for coming on here. Thanks for partnering with us. I mean, I love stuff like this. I love stuff like this. There's so much software out there that says, cut me a check and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And that does tie in perfectly to what we would recommend listeners do right after this listen and response. And that's visit gmpilot.com. You'll see there they have this form to get your own free report on your own business's data that will show how they can boost your profitability by 5% or more. It's very easy. So Guys, thank you very much. Is there anything you want to add in terms of takeaways of your own or next steps you'd recommend to the listeners?
Yeah, we look forward to meeting more people, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Happy
Yes.
Thanksgiving.
Happy
And if you
holidays.
listen to this
Tiny
after
Tim
Thanksgiving, which will
Cijoy
be
came
most
in
of
for the win.
Hope you had a good one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Depending on when you
Oh, I hope you
listen.
had a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a look back. So yeah, hopefully
Look
you
back.
guys are
Yeah.
full.
Hope you guys had a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
turkey week.
Yeah, you won your turkey bowl, whatever that was. That you fell asleep on the couch, that your drunk uncle wasn't too drunk, that everything worked
Yeah.
out well.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
It's been a great
Thank you.
show, and we'll see you on the other
Pleasure.
side.
See you guys.
Have a good one.